Your lips are so soft.
The Therapist's Secret. I'm about to destroy the life of the woman I love, and she has no idea it's coming. But wait, before I tell you how I, Josh, became the most hated man in our small city, and before you learn about Abby and the terrible choice that changed everything, let me ask you this. What would you do if helping people was slowly killing you inside? Stay with me, because what happened next will shock you. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why some secrets should never be kept, and why the people we trust the most can hurt us the deepest. 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. My name is Josh, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a therapist in downtown Portland, helping people who can't control their feelings about love and relationships. Every day, people sit in my office and tell me their darkest secrets. They trust me with their hearts, but I was living a lie. You see, while I spent my days telling people how to fix their broken relationships, I had never felt real love myself. Not once. Not ever. And the worst part, I thought that made me better than everyone else. I remember the day everything started to fall apart. It was a Tuesday morning, and rain was hitting my office window like tiny bullets. My first patient of the day was Sarah, a 25-year-old woman who couldn't stop falling for the wrong guys. "Josh," she said, her voice shaking, "I keep choosing men who hurt me. What's wrong with me?" I gave her my usual answer. "Love is just chemicals in your brain, Sarah. You can control it if you try hard enough. Don't let feelings make your choices for you." She nodded and wrote down everything I said, but as she left, something felt different. For the first time in my career, my own words sounded empty to me. That afternoon, I went home to my small apartment above the coffee shop on 5th Street. My 2 best friends, Mike and Tony, were already there playing video games. They both had keys to my place. We'd been friends since high school. "Yo, Josh," Mike called out, without looking away from the TV. "Guess what? I got 3 dates this week." "3!" Tony laughed. "Show off. I only got 2, but one of them was with that cute girl from the bookstore." I rolled my eyes. These guys spent their whole lives chasing girls, going on dates, falling in and out of love every month. It was exhausting just watching them. "You guys waste so much time," I said, grabbing a soda from the fridge. "All that dating drama? Who needs it?" "Come on, Josh," Tony said. "When's the last time you even talked to a girl you liked?" I was about to give them my usual speech about how I was too focused on my career when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Abby. "Hey Josh, I'm making dinner tonight for a few friends. Want to come over? I'm trying a new pasta recipe." Abby. Just thinking about her name made something weird happen in my chest, like a warm feeling I couldn't explain. She lived 2 floors down from me, and we'd been friends for about a year. She had long brown hair that always smelled like vanilla, and when she smiled, her whole face lit up. "Actually," I said, still staring at my phone, "I do have plans tonight." Mike and Tony both turned to look at me. "Plans? With a girl? It's just Abby, we're friends." "Dude," Mike said, "you've been talking about just Abby for months. When are you going to ask her out?" I felt my face get hot. "It's not like that. We're just friends." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. There was something about Abby that made me feel different. When I was with her, my brain got quiet in a good way. She made me laugh without even trying. And lately, I'd been thinking about her more and more. An hour later, I was standing outside Abby's door with a bottle of cheap wine, trying to calm my nerves. Why was I so nervous? It was just dinner with friends. I knocked, and Abby opened the door wearing a yellow dress that made her eyes look like chocolate. "Josh, you came!" She hugged me, and for just a second, I felt like I could stay in that hug forever. Come in. I want you to meet everyone." I followed her into her tiny apartment. It smelled amazing, like garlic and herbs, and something sweet baking in the oven. There were about 6 people there, all laughing and talking. But the first person I saw made my stomach drop. "Josh, this is David," Abby said, pulling me over to a tall guy in an expensive suit. "David, this is Josh, my upstairs neighbor I was telling you about." David shook my hand with a grip that was way too strong. "Ah, the famous Josh. Abby talks about you all the time." I looked at Abby, confused. "You do?" She blushed. "I just mentioned that you're a therapist and you help people. David thinks that's really cool." "Yeah," David said, not sounding like he thought it was cool at all. "I'm in real estate. Just closed $1 million deal this week." He put his arm around Abby's waist, and I felt something dark twist in my stomach. They were dating. Of course they were dating. The rest of the dinner was torture. I watched David talk about his job, his car, his gym routine, while Abby listened with that sweet smile of hers. He barely looked at her when she talked about her dream of opening a bakery someday. "That's cute, babe," he said when she mentioned wanting to take a cooking class. "But let's be realistic. Baking is more of a hobby, right?" I saw something flicker across Abby's face. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. But she just nodded and changed the subject. After dinner, I helped her clean up while everyone else sat around talking. "Your food was incredible," I told her as we washed dishes together. "Seriously, Abby, you should open that bakery you talked about." Her face lit up. "You really think so? I've been saving money, but David says it's too risky." "David doesn't know what he's talking about," I said, then caught myself. "I mean, it's your dream. You should follow it." She looked at me for a long moment, and I felt that warm feeling in my chest again. "Thanks, Josh. You always know exactly what to say." After everyone left, I walked back upstairs feeling confused and angry and sad all at once. What was wrong with me? I spent my days telling people that love was just chemicals, that feelings weren't important. So why did seeing Abby with David make me feel like someone had punched me in the stomach? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Abby's smile, about the way she said my name, about how David's arm looked around her waist. I was 28 years old, and for the first time in my life, I thought I might be in love. But there was a problem. A big problem that I didn't know about yet. The next morning, I had the worst headache of my life. These headaches had been happening more and more lately, but this one was different. It felt like someone was squeezing my brain with giant hands. I called in sick to work and spent the day in bed, trying not to think about Abby and David. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Around noon, Mike and Tony showed up with coffee and bagels. "You look terrible," Tony said, setting a cup of coffee on my nightstand. "Thanks, that makes me feel so much better." "Seriously though," Mike said, "you've been weird lately, and these headaches are getting worse. Maybe you should see a doctor." I started to argue, but another wave of pain hit me. Maybe you're right. That afternoon, they dragged me to the emergency room. The doctor, a woman about my age with kind eyes, asked me a bunch of questions about the headaches when they started, how often I got them. "We're going to do some tests," she said, "just to be safe." 3 hours later, I was lying in a big machine getting my brain scanned. The noise was so loud I couldn't think, which was actually kind of nice. For 20 minutes, I didn't have to think about Abby or David, or the weird feelings I couldn't understand. But when the tests were done, everything changed. "Josh," the doctor said, sitting down across from me with a serious look on her face, "we found something." My heart started beating fast. Something bad. Not bad exactly, but unusual. She pulled out some pictures that looked like slices of my brain. "You have a small tumor pressing against your pituitary gland. It's not cancer," she added quickly when she saw my face. "But it's been affecting your hormones for years." I stared at the pictures, not understanding. "What does that mean?" "It means your body never went through puberty the way it should have. Your testosterone levels are extremely low, and you're producing too much of another hormone called prolactin. That's why you've never felt certain urges that most people your age have felt since they were teenagers. The room went quiet. I could hear my heart beating in my ears. You mean you've never felt sexual attraction because your body physically couldn't produce those feelings? The good news is, we can remove the tumor with a simple surgery. After that, your hormones will balance out, and you'll finally experience what you missed. I walked out of the hospital in a daze. My whole life, my job, my beliefs about love and relationships, the way I'd been so sure I was better than everyone else because I didn't need those things. It was all based on a lie. I wasn't stronger than other people. I was just broken. 2 weeks later, I was back in the hospital for surgery. Mike and Tony waited with me until they wheeled me away. "Don't worry, man," Mike said. "You're going to be fine." But I wasn't worried about the surgery. I was worried about what would happen after. If I started feeling things I'd never felt before, would I still be me? And what about my job? How could I help other people with their love problems when I'd never experienced love myself? The surgery went perfectly. When I woke up, my parents were there with flowers and balloons that said, "Get well soon." They looked so happy and relieved. "How do you feel, honey?" my mom asked. "Different," I said, and it was true. Even though it had only been a few hours, something inside me felt awake. I stayed at my parents' house for a week while I recovered. Every day I felt a little more different. Colors seemed brighter, food tasted better, and when I saw attractive women on TV or in magazines, I felt something I'd never felt before. A warm, interested feeling that started in my stomach and spread everywhere. When I finally went back to my apartment, Mike and Tony threw a little welcome to puberty party. It was embarrassing, but also kind of sweet. "So," Tony said, "how does it feel to finally be a real man?" I laughed, but inside I was scared. Because the feelings weren't just happening when I was alone or watching TV. They were happening all the time, and they were getting stronger. Especially when I thought about Abby. The day I went back to work, I ran into her in the hallway outside our building. "Josh!" she said, and my whole body reacted to her voice in a way it never had before. "I heard you were in the hospital. Are you okay?" She was wearing jeans and a blue sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked beautiful, and for the first time, my body was telling me exactly how beautiful she was. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Just some minor surgery." "David and I broke up," she said suddenly, then looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I don't know why I told you that." My heart jumped. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I think so. He said I was too focused on silly dreams and not serious enough about the future." She made air quotes with her fingers, and I wanted to find David and punch him in the face. "Your dreams aren't silly," I said. "They're the best thing about you." She looked at me with those chocolate eyes, and something passed between us. Something I'd never felt before, but somehow understood perfectly. "Want to get coffee sometime this week?" she asked. "Yes," I said, way too quickly. "I mean, sure. That sounds nice." She smiled and walked away, and I stood there watching her go, feeling like my whole world had just tilted sideways. That night, I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Abby's smile. Every time the phone rang, I hoped it was her. These feelings were so strong, so overwhelming, that I felt like I might explode. I called the doctor who did my surgery. "Dr. Martinez, this is Josh. I had the pituitary tumor surgery a few weeks ago." "Of course. How are you feeling?" "That's the problem. I'm feeling everything. All at once. Is this normal?" She laughed. "Josh, your body is experiencing 15 years of puberty all at once. The feelings you should have had gradually as a teenager are hitting you like a tidal wave. It's completely normal, but I know it's overwhelming. How long will it last? Your hormones should balance out in a few months. Until then, just try to be patient with yourself. And Josh, this is a good thing. You're finally experiencing what it means to be human." After I hung up, I sat on my couch thinking about what she'd said. For the first time in my life, I was feeling real attraction, real desire, real love. And it was all focused on one person, Abby. But there was still one problem. I was supposed to be an expert on relationships, and I'd never been in one. I was supposed to help people control their feelings, and I couldn't control my own. How could I face my patients when I was just as confused as they were? The next day at work, everything went wrong. My first patient was a woman named Lisa, who'd been coming to see me for months. She was married, but couldn't stop thinking about her ex-boyfriend. "I dream about him every night, Josh," she said. "I know I should forget him, but I can't stop wanting him." Usually, I would have told her that she was letting her emotions control her, that she needed to be stronger, that love was just chemicals she could overcome. But as I listened to her talk about desire and longing and not being able to sleep because of how much she wanted someone, I realized she was describing exactly how I felt about Abby. "Maybe," I said slowly, "maybe those feelings are trying to tell you something important." Lisa looked surprised. "But you always say feelings are just distractions." I was wrong about that. The session ended with Lisa looking confused and me feeling like a fraud. How many people had I given terrible advice to over the years? How many people had I hurt by telling them to ignore the very feelings that made them human? That evening, Abby texted me. "Coffee tomorrow at 3? There's this new place on Morrison Street I want to try." I stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. "Can't wait." But I was terrified, because tomorrow I would have to sit across from the woman I was falling in love with and pretend to be the same Josh she'd always known. I would have to pretend I wasn't dying to touch her hand, to kiss her, to tell her how I felt. And I had no idea how to do any of those things. As I got ready for bed, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same hair, same everything. But inside, I was completely different. The old Josh was gone, and I didn't know who the new Josh was supposed to be. All I knew was that tomorrow, everything would change again. Because I was going to tell Abby the truth about my surgery, about my feelings, about everything. What I didn't know was that telling the truth would be the biggest mistake of my life, and that by next week, I would lose everything that mattered to me. The worst part about destroying someone you love isn't the guilt. It's the moment you realize they never loved you back. 3 days after our coffee date, I thought I had everything figured out. Abby and I had talked for 4 hours straight, laughing until our stomachs hurt, sharing stories I'd never told anyone. When she reached across the table and touched my hand, I felt like I could fly. But I was about to learn that some feelings are too dangerous to trust. "Josh," she'd said as we walked back to our building, "I'm so glad we're getting to know each other better. You're different from any guy I've ever met." Different. If only she knew how different. That night, I'd called Mike and Tony to tell them about the date. "Dude, you're glowing," Mike said. "I can hear it in your voice." "She likes me," I said, still not quite believing it. "She actually likes me." "Of course she does," Tony said. "What's not to like?" But that was the problem. Abby liked the old Josh, the calm, controlled therapist who had his life together. She had no idea that the new Josh was a mess of hormones and feelings he couldn't understand. The next morning at work, everything went wrong again. My patient was a 22-year-old guy named Kevin, who couldn't stop thinking about his coworker. "I know she's not interested," he said, "but I can't focus on anything else. I think about her all day, every day. Is that normal?" "Yes," I said without thinking. "That's completely normal." Kevin looked shocked. "But last month you told me those thoughts were unhealthy obsession." My face got hot. Well, sometimes what seems like obsession is actually just strong feelings. So should I tell her how I feel? I thought about Abby, about how scared I was to tell her the truth about my surgery and my feelings. Yes, you should tell her. Keeping secrets from someone you care about is worse than risking rejection. Kevin left looking happy and hopeful, but I felt sick, I was giving advice I was too scared to follow myself. That afternoon, Abby texted, "Want to come over tonight? I'm making dinner again." This time, it would just be the two of us. I spent 2 hours getting ready, changing clothes 3 times, practicing what I would say about my surgery. I would tell her everything about the tumor, about never feeling attraction before, about how she was the first person I'd ever really loved. When I got to her apartment, she was wearing a red dress that made my heart race. "You look beautiful," I said, and she blushed. "Thank you. Come in, dinner's almost ready." Her apartment smelled like garlic and wine and something sweet. She'd set the table with candles and cloth napkins. "This is fancy," I said. "I wanted tonight to be special," she said, and something in her voice made me look at her more carefully. During dinner, we talked about everything and nothing. She told me about her job at the marketing firm, how much she hated it, how she dreamed of opening a bakery but was scared to take the risk. "David used to say I was being childish," she said. "That dreams are for kids and adults have to be practical." "David was an idiot," I said, and she laughed. "You always make me feel like my dreams matter." "They do matter. You matter." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Josh, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "You've been different lately. Happier, maybe? More alive? What changed?" This was it, my chance to tell her everything. "I had surgery a few weeks ago," I started. "Surgery? For what?" I took a deep breath. "I had a brain tumor. A small one," I added quickly when her eyes went wide. "It was pressing on a gland that controls hormones. For my whole life, I never experienced attraction the way other people do. I thought I was above all that, but really, my body just couldn't produce those feelings." She was staring at me, not saying anything. "The surgery fixed it," I continued. "And now I'm feeling things I've never felt before. Strong things. About you." The silence stretched between us like a rope about to snap. "You've never felt attraction? Ever?" she asked quietly. "Not until now. Not until you." She let go of my hand and sat back in her chair. "So all those times you gave me advice about David, about following my heart, about not letting anyone dim my light. You were saying that without ever having experienced love yourself?" My stomach dropped. "Yes, but..." "And your job. You're a relationship therapist. You help people with problems you've never had." "That's changing now. I'm learning." "Learning?" Her voice was getting louder. "Josh, I've been taking your advice for months. I broke up with David partly because of things you said, and you were just... guessing?" "I wasn't guessing. I cared about you. I wanted you to be happy. But you didn't even know what happiness felt like." She stood up and started pacing around her tiny kitchen. "This is so messed up, Josh. Do you realize how messed up this is?" "I know it's weird, but..." "Weird? It's not weird, it's dishonest. You've been lying to me. To everyone." I wasn't lying. I didn't know about the tumor. She turned to face me, and there were tears in her eyes. "That's not the point. The point is, you built your whole life around judging other people's feelings when you couldn't feel anything yourself. And now you want me to believe that I'm your first real love? How convenient. Abby, please. I need you to leave. Can we talk about this? I know it's a lot, but leave, Josh, please." I walked back to my apartment, feeling like someone had scooped out my insides with a spoon. I'd told her the truth, and she'd rejected me completely. Not just rejected, she was disgusted by me. I spent the next 3 days calling in sick to work and hiding in my apartment. Mike and Tony came by, but I pretended not to be home. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the look on Abby's face when she told me to leave. On Friday, my boss called. "Josh, you've missed 3 days of work without a good reason. You have patients depending on you." "I can't come in," I said. "I'm not qualified to help anyone." "What are you talking about? You're one of our best therapists." "I'm a fraud, Sandra. I've been giving people advice about love and relationships when I've never experienced either one. There was a long pause. Josh, I think you should come in. We need to talk. That afternoon, I dragged myself to the office. Sandra was waiting in her office with a cup of coffee and a concerned look. Tell me what's going on, she said. So I told her everything. About the tumor, about never feeling attraction, about Abby, about how I'd been lying to my patients for years without realizing it. When I finished, Sandra was quiet for a long time. Josh, she said finally, do you think you're the first therapist who's learned something new about themselves? Do you think experience is the only thing that makes someone qualified to help others? But I was so wrong about everything. Were you? Think about the patients you've helped over the years. Mrs. Chen, who learned to communicate with her husband. Jake, who stopped his gambling addiction. Sarah, who finally left her abusive boyfriend. Did you help them or not? I thought about it. I guess I did help some people. You helped them because you listened to them, because you cared about their happiness more than your own theories. The fact that you're questioning yourself now, the fact that you're learning and growing, that doesn't make you a fraud. It makes you human. But what about my feelings for Abby? How can I trust them when I don't understand them? Sandra smiled. Josh, figuring out love is something everyone has to do. You're not behind. You're just starting. And there's nothing wrong with that. I left her office feeling a little better, but I still had no idea how to fix things with Abby. That weekend, I ran into her in the laundry room in our building's basement. She was folding towels and listening to music on her headphones. When she saw me, she took them off but didn't say anything. Hi, I said. Hi. We stood there in awkward silence for a minute, the washing machines humming around us. I've been thinking about what you said, I said finally. And you're right. I was dishonest, even if I didn't mean to be. I'm sorry. She stopped folding and looked at me. Josh, I wasn't just mad about the dishonesty. What else? I was scared. Scared of what? She sat down on the bench next to the dryers. Do you remember when I told you about my ex-boyfriend before David? The one I dated in college? I sat down next to her, careful to leave space between us. Ryan? Yeah. Ryan told me he loved me after we'd been dating for 6 months. And I believed him. I trusted him completely. Her voice got quiet. But it turned out he was just using me to get back at his ex-girlfriend. He didn't love me at all. He was just pretending until she got jealous enough to take him back. My heart sank. Abby, I would never. How do I know that? You're experiencing love for the first time in your life. How do I know I'm not just practice for you? How do I know that when you figure out what you really want, it won't be someone else? I stared at her, finally understanding why she'd been so upset. It wasn't just about my dishonesty. It was about her fear that I would hurt her the way Ryan had. Because, I said quietly, the first time I ever felt love, it was for you. Not love in general, love for you specifically. Your laugh, your dreams, the way you make terrible jokes when you're nervous, the way you believe in people even when they don't deserve it. I didn't fall in love with the concept of love. I fell in love with Abby. She was looking at me now, and I could see something softening in her eyes. But I understand why you're scared, I continued. And I understand if you can't trust me. I just want you to know that everything I feel for you is real, even if I don't know how to handle it yet. She was quiet for a long time, thinking. I was going to move to Seattle, she said suddenly. What? After we fought, I applied for a job at a bakery there. I got it. I was going to leave next month and start over somewhere new. My heart stopped. Were? As in past tense? I don't know. Maybe I was running away from my feelings instead of dealing with them. She looked at me. Maybe we both need to stop running. What does that mean? She took a deep breath. It means maybe we could try being friends first. Real friends. No secrets, no pretending, no pressure. Just see what happens. It wasn't what I'd hoped for, but it was more than I'd expected. I'd like that. But Josh, if we do this, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll be honest about what you're feeling, even when it's confusing, or scary, or embarrassing. And promise me you'll tell me if you start having doubts about us. I promise. She smiled for the first time since our fight. Okay then, friends. We shook hands, and I felt that warm feeling in my chest again. But this time, it wasn't just desire or attraction, it was hope. Over the next month, we rebuilt our friendship slowly. We had coffee twice a week, went to movies, took walks around the neighborhood. I told her about my patients, without breaking confidentiality. And she told me about her job and her dreams. And I kept my promise. When I felt overwhelmed by how much I wanted to kiss her, I told her. When I had a nightmare that she decided to move to Seattle after all, I told her. When I realized I was falling deeper in love with her every day, I told her that too. She was patient with me in a way I didn't deserve. When I got jealous because a guy at the coffee shop flirted with her, she explained why jealousy was normal, but didn't mean I owned her. When I felt guilty about my past advice to patients, she reminded me that everyone makes mistakes, but not everyone learns from them. You're becoming a better therapist because of what you've learned about yourself, she said one evening as we walked through the park near our building. That's not something to be ashamed of. How do you always know exactly what to say? Because I care about you, Josh. And when you care about someone, you pay attention to what they need to hear. That night, as I walked her to her door, she stopped and turned to face me. Josh? Yeah? I think I'm ready to stop being just friends. My heart started racing. Are you sure? I'm sure. I trust you. And I think I'm falling in love with you too. She kissed me then, right there in the hallway between our apartments. It was my first real kiss, and it was perfect, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we broke apart, I felt like I could conquer the world. So, what happens now? I asked. Now, she said, smiling. We figure it out together. 6 months later, Abby and I were living together in a bigger apartment across town. She turned down the job in Seattle and instead opened a small bakery in our neighborhood. It was scary and risky, and exactly what she'd always dreamed of. I'd gone back to school to learn more about therapy and relationships, and I'd started being honest with my patients about my own journey of learning about love. Dr. Josh, one patient said during a session, you seem so much more real than you used to be. That's because I am more real, I said. I used to think I had to have all the answers to help people. But sometimes the best thing we can do is admit we're all just figuring it out as we go along. On our first anniversary, Abby surprised me with a cake she'd made herself. It was shaped like a brain, with little sugar flowers growing out of it. For your tumor, she explained, laughing. The best thing that ever happened to us. I love you, I said, still amazed that I could feel those words and mean them completely. I love you too, she said. All of you. Even the parts you're still discovering. That night, as we lay in bed talking about our plans for the future, I realized something important. The old Josh had thought he was better than everyone else because he didn't need love. But the new Josh understood that love wasn't a weakness or a distraction. It was what made life worth living. I'd spent years telling people to control their feelings, to not let emotions rule their decisions. But I'd been wrong. Feelings aren't something to control or overcome. They're something to understand, to learn from, to let guide us towards the people and experiences that matter most. My tumor had taken away the first 28 years of my life, but it had also given me something precious, the chance to experience love for the first time with someone who loved me back. And as I held Abby close and listened to her breathing get slow and steady as she fell asleep, I knew that every confused day, every overwhelming feeling, every moment of fear and doubt had been worth it to get to this moment. Because this was what it meant to be human. This was what it meant to love and be loved. and it was more beautiful than any of my old theories had ever imagined. Sometimes the things we think are our biggest weaknesses turn out to be our greatest strengths. Sometimes the people who challenge us the most are the ones who love us the best. And sometimes, losing everything we thought we knew about ourselves is the only way to discover who we really are. Josh learned that love isn't something you control. It's something you surrender to. And in that surrender, he found not just Abby, but himself. That's the end of the story. See you on the next one. Please, don't forget to click the subscribe button, like and comment where you are watching from.